Go inside the studio with the Ricky Harris Media Podcast. Here's your host, Ricky Harris.
Welcome to episode 12. How's everybody doing? This is Ricky, like the announcer said. I do want to start off this episode talking about a classic example of my bad luck sometimes. I have to laugh about it because, well, for one, it was very funny, but it's just the kind of stuff that happens to me sometimes. And back when I was younger, it would get me downright frustrated. But anymore, it's just absolutely hilarious. So I was helping my mom out, doing the son thing, helping your mom out. She was really frustrated at how dirty her car was getting. I was like, yeah, we could take it over to the quarter wash and give a little spray down. At that point, you got to use the brush on it. It's looking pretty bad. It's starting to get where there's mildew on the paint. Yeah, it's definitely time. It's been time for a wash. All right, cool. So I put my 5 tokens in there, put it on brush, and there's no soap coming out of the brush. There's a hose, Oh, cool. It goes to the brush, Suds come out of the brush, perfect. And then I look up and I see a broken hose and I see a big ball of soap suds forming and then plop hits the ground. At that point, I was thinking about, let me go back about 20 years. 20-year ago, Ricky would have been like, what is this? Just frustrated. But over time, you learn to develop a sense of humor when stuff like that happens. But more importantly, you learn to improvise. So I grabbed the brush and, well, it's coming from up there now. So I'll just hold the brush up there and then grab me some soap and then, oh man, just, because it's like you've got that timer going. So it's not like you're going to be like, hey, well, there's nobody there anyway, but if there was someone that worked there, you'd be like, hey, this thing's messed up. And then your time runs out. It's like, well, I just wasted 5 tokens. I just wasted $1.25. That's the stuff that goes through my mind. I had to share that story. So anytime you're frustrated, something is stressing you out, whether it be recording, whether it be at your day job, night job, or if this is your day or night job, or both. Sometimes it can go that long, yes. Think about that story. I'm getting rained on by soap. Okay, so those of you that have been paying attention, look at me, I did it again. Snuck this one in on you. Does it sound different? Do I sound different? I should sound different because I have completely changed everything up again. But in this case, this is for demonstration of what you can do to do voiceover or any kind of recording in a pinch where you don't want to have the room influencing your sound, because the room may be flattering to your sound. But if you're in a residential area, background noise, but more importantly, the reflections of the room probably are not going to be very flattering. I'm actually in the closet right now talking on my MXL 990 going directly into the field audio recorder. It's a very simple setup, just going right in. Those of you that are really picky about audio, or picky in general, but especially audio, probably notice the preamp noise if you really turn it up, or if you have some very detailed headphones. Now, when I say detailed, I mean it has a very, very big boost in the high end, the upper frequencies. Think about cymbals or going that sound. Headphones that have that, you can really hear that hiss. Most of the time, especially listening on speakers, consumer audio gear, you're not going to notice that. But it's one thing that will hurt you down the road when it comes to processing. Ideally, the less noise in your signal, the better. Speaking of noise, I did it to you again. Back on my favorite setup as of late, I actually recorded a audio book audition with this setup last weekend. But it's the SM57 going into a mic booster, then into a vacuum tube preamp, line level going into the field audio recorder. A pop filter, microphones on the stand, the field audio recorder is mounted directly to the stand now, so it's kind of all in one chunk. I can go directly in using the preamps, and hey, let's demonstrate that right now. Why not? This is an audio engineering geeky production podcast, so let's see what it sounds like. Okay, that should be pretty obvious. I have the input level set at, 69. Anyway, stupid. But I've got the preamp turned up pretty high. What is 100%? Let's see. I don't want to talk with it up that loud. So 100% is 90. So it's at 69 right now to get the same level, which I'm peaking at around minus 13 dB full scale. Full scale VU. So, I'm sorry, full scale dB. See, it even confuses me. I realize this stuff is complicated. But that's what it sounds like going directly in. And again, if you're recording something loud, or if you talk really loud, you can afford to bring that gain down. Or if you're recording a loud instrument, which is primarily what these microphones are, their intended purpose. In general, dynamic microphones are for recording louder sources. And it works great. But for doing voiceover, for doing anything with movie production, video production, I wouldn't recommend this setup. I would put a mic booster. Just Google mic booster or inline mic preamp for dynamic microphones. And you can get one of those, plug it in, and that'll give you the additional boost you need if your preamps are this noisy. Or you can change out the entire field audio recorder. And it's not a good not a good idea. It's not a bad idea to change up your gear to keep up with the current technology. Like I was explaining a couple of shows ago about 32-bit float audio. That's a wonderful development. That makes the technology even more invisible and helps you be creative and be the performer that you have always wanted to be without having the technology to loom over your head and bring you down. Okay, enough of the preamp noise. We're going to let this field audio recorder breathe a little bit, and we're going to use it on line input and use the vacuum tube preamp and the mic booster, all of it together to help bring up that gain. Hopefully, pretty noise-free. I'm going to be really quiet for about 5 seconds, exactly 5 seconds. I'm going to count down so you can crank it up and you can listen. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there we go. That's the noise floor of this setup. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty picky, and that works. Now, talking again a little further about consumer audio gear, making it jive well with professional audio gear to get you by, but sometimes the production calls for such a thing. Let's say you wanted to plug up a phone And you don't want to have Bluetooth. You don't want to have that latency. And you don't want to have the hassle. You just want to plug the phone directly in and record whatever audio is on that at that time directly in, so you have a good recording of it. You don't want to record the speaker, okay? You want to have it in the audio directly so it's very easy to understand. At that point, yeah, you can go in and tweak the EQ, do a really aggressive mid-boost, like 1 kilohertz, put a little hump in there. That way it still sounds like it's coming through a speakerphone, but it will be easy to understand. So, how would you go about doing that? Some phones behave differently, I've found, when you plug this into professional audio gear directly. Now, that being the aux-in adapter cable going to a Y cable with 2 XLR connections going into your field audio recorder, your mixing board, or your camera. In that case, it would most likely be XLR or a tip ring sleeve 1/8" connection or 3.5 millimeter. So plug that right in there, and sometimes the phone will kind of go, huh? I don't know what this is. It sees this very high resistance of this input because it's not a pair of headphones. It doesn't have the resistance. It's not what it's expecting. So the software assumes that it's not plugged in or something is configured incorrectly. The smartphone is being smart. But you can fool it. And I've found, back to 1K, but in this case, 1 kilo ohms or 1,000 ohms, you can place 2 1,000 ohm resistors across each side of your stereo pair to load the phone down to where it thinks headphones are connected. I do this all the time with a tablet, and that I use that as my audio player for doing traditional mixing with the analog console. Mainly it's because it's a lot of fun to do it that way. There's really no need to do it that way, but it's fun still. So that's the way I do it. That's the way I interface my tablet into the mixing console without it doing that, without it getting confused. And a lot of times you plug it in, the first plug in, it'll go, oh, okay, headphones. It'll play, and then it'll just stop. Usually it'll pause. That's another thing. Sometimes it'll pause, and I've found by loading it down, it pretty much always thinks that a pair of headphones are connected. That way you can plug it in to whatever. That really comes in handy when you're doing any kind of live audio and you want to have an audio device like your phone plugged directly into the board so there's no fuss, you have really good audio quality, plugged right in. That's a good way to do it. If you want one of these audio interface boxes, I will build you one. They're very simple electronically. But, of course, the configuration can be, your imagination. I think my configuration on this box is a plastic box with an 1/8" connection female, just like you would plug a headphone wire into, on one side, and out the other comes two audio lines with a 1/4" jack on each one. So it's basically a pigtail Y with a box, and that's where the electronics are. A simpler setup would just be have that built into a Y or built into the aux cable. There's lots of different ways of doing that. So if you want one of those load boxes, I guess you would call it a dummy load, a phone dummy load for aux-in capability, and you could plug it into your car. And I know those that if you're listening that are audiophiles and are thinking, well, why not just do this Bluetooth? Yes, you can. With the newer standards of Bluetooth, it's pretty good. I'd say to my picky ears, I'd say it's about 90% as good. Some really, really picky audiophiles may put it down a little bit worse of a grade than that. I give it a B. I think it sounds pretty good. but there is a latency. And when you're doing professional audio gear, sometimes that will really be annoying. It'll be about a half a second roughly. So anything you play off the phone, there's going to be a lag. But that may not cause an issue. So you can run it in Bluetooth. A lot of modern mixing boards, digital mixing boards, will have a Bluetooth phone input. Very nice. Especially when you're doing, like I said earlier, when you're doing any kind of live audio. That's a good way to go too. There's lots of options here, and that can be overwhelming. I get it. Too many options will discourage you too. So it's a lot about figuring out the workflow that works for you. To me, I guess because I grew up in an analog studio, grew up in my career, early career in media in an analog studio, very largely analog studio. That's what I'm used to. I like having the recorder just be a dumb recorder. It does what it does. It records. I plug everything in and out of that, and then we're good. I like that workflow. But some people like to record directly into the computer, directly into the digital audio workstation. Which one's better? They're about the same, really. I will say recording directly in on the computer does give you a lot more capability for more audio tracks. That's probably more suited for tracking music because you could track basically limited to how many inputs you have on your audio interface. Record right in. That's a good workflow. Doing spoken word like I'm doing now, podcasting, audiobooks, voiceover. It's a little bit of a complicated setup. I will say it's not quite necessary. Also, speaking about workflow, I like the field audio recorder approach because it separates the two mediums, that being analog and digital. What do I mean by that, Ricky? That's what you're saying, right? That's what you're saying. Analog and digital. Speak English, please. Okay. So analog being the creative part of your brain, performing. What I'm doing right now in this very moment in time, and you're hearing it after the fact. But right now, I'm doing the analog medium, the creative side. Going right in the recorder, simple setup, in the live room, perfect. When I'm done, I pop the SD card out, pop it into the laptop. That point, then it becomes technical. That way you're separating those two. Now, this is not my idea. This is not my idea, and I want to give credit to Princess Gooden. I will be working with her on an upcoming film. More details coming out. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. There's going to be a film coming out. All I can say. But that is very good advice of separating those two and not mismatching them or mashing them together to the point where each one can influence the other. Keep it separate, and that works great. It keeps you relaxed, so that way your mind can think, and you can have a clear mind, and you can deliver your performance, and you've got it. And you don't have to do like 20 takes and then be really annoyed with yourself. I've been there. I'm still there. I'm still practicing. This is always an art of practice. It's very much like playing a musical instrument or anything. It takes practice. All right, well, that's going to do it, folks, for this episode. I greatly appreciate you listening to the Ricky Harris Media Podcast. If you like what you hear, please leave a comment. If you don't like what you hear, leave a comment. Let me know what you want to hear more of, less of. And let's get together. If you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, you want to record something, you want me to make you some kind of crazy adapter device, or put our heads together and come up with a good solution for your audio needs or video needs, reach out to me. The Ricky Harris Media Podcast, Ricky Harris Media on YouTube, Ricky Radio on Twitter. See you guys and gals next time. Later. Bye.